Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Responsible Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
When dealing with frustrating behavior, yelling can quickly become our default way of handling things. But since you're listening to this podcast, I know you're looking for a better way. That's why I created my free guide to help you get out of the yelling cycle. This 6-part free guide gives you the foundational information to start breaking the toxic yelling cycle. Click the link in my show notes to get your free guide today. This might be the hardest cycle to break as parents, but I have your back, and together we can change the way we respond.
I am very excited to have Kimberly Grustas on the podcast today. If you don't know Kimberly, you're going to fall in love with her very quickly after this, especially if you have young children heading into puberty. This is a podcast that you must listen to. Kimberly started a company called Good For You Girls, and this was in response to her 2 daughters who were moving into puberty, experiencing, products and makeup and all of the things that are laden with chemicals and toxic, all of the harm. So she actually created a company that helps keep kids away from these toxic chemicals to really support their bodies during this critical time of puberty. So this is going to be an awesome conversation. We're not just talking about products. We're talking about how to have these empowered conversations with your kids. So I am very excited. This is going to be an awesome podcast. So Kimberly, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you get started with a skincare product line for teens?
Yeah. So let me give you a little bit about my journey. So I'm a creative director by trade, and I was a fitness nut in the day. I say the day because if I date myself, it's scary. I hate to remind myself. But anyway, so I worked in the nutrition business. I worked for large companies that worked with bodybuilders, professional athletes. So I worked with protein powders, amino acids, creatines, those type of ingestibles. So in a marketing position, when you're marketing a product like that, it's very research. People don't understand it's creative, but it's very research driven. So I wanted to understand why these things worked well in our body, why the body needed them in these, with these certain athletes. So I became a research nut. And so that company ended up selling. I worked there for many, many years. They ended up selling, and then I went to work for an advertising agency. And when I went to the agency, all of these nutrition companies started to come out of the woodwork. I had made a name for myself. I was a woman in a man's industry, which was so fun, but I spoke a different language. I spoke ingredients and quality rather than the testosterone-driven focus that they had. So anyway, so I had all these companies coming out of the woodwork to hire me. The agency offered me a partnership and I said, thank you, but no. And I started my own advertising agency in 2000. So that's really kind of where, so I have a little bit of leg up in, developing a product. So I was taking on not only sport nutrition companies, but it was the very early days of natural product industry. And I loved these people. They were passionate. I call it the hairy armpit Birkenstock days. They were a crazy bunch, but they were so passionate about their purpose. And I fell in love with them. So I started to take them on as clients. Well, ironically, the same year I launched my company, my first daughter, I was pregnant with my daughter. So she was born in 2000. She had severe asthma and allergies, food allergies, and she had an upper respiratory condition which would cause her to stop breathing. So we were running to the emergency room, and it wasn't like we had any notice. She would literally just go lethargic and just like limp. And so, one of the visits to the emergency room, the doctor said, do you realize how serious this is? And I said, yes, I do. So there was such research again, because that's what I do. It was researching everything that upset her airways. So in my home, we got rid of everything. There was no laundry detergent. There were no candles. There was no perfume. There were no scents or anything that would trigger an airway response, in a breathing response. And then again, she had food allergies. So I was baking all the food, baby food and all that stuff. So it was crazy. So we figured her out. And then 2 years later, my second daughter was born. She had a similar respiratory, not as severe, but she had eczema and she had a hive disorder. So now the skin's involved. So I was dealing with internal, right, respiratory, and now I've got skin issues. So there I went really down the rabbit hole and really discovered how a lot of these chemicals, your skin is your largest organ. 65% of what you put your body gets absorbed right into your bloodstream. And so again, my next round of knowledge. And then I can jump to 2008. So in 2008, my daughters loved Hannah Montana. They were, we even went to a concert.
Hard not to.
Well, yeah, and I was one of the crazy moms dancing, like all the other moms are sitting there and I'm dancing with my kids. I'm like, come on, But anyway, there was a bath set at Target, a Hannah Montana bath set, and my daughter ran to it. She was 8. And I picked it up, flipped it over, made in China, had about 5 lines of dyes. And it was laden with preservatives and it was toxic. Honestly, it was toxic. So, here I am for the last 8 years controlling everything that went in and on their bodies. And I was just appalled. I said, oh my gosh, is this really what we're slathering on our children? I was mortified. And not only I was shocked, but I was also shocked at 8 that she wanted in. Right.
Absolutely.
And so, my brain, again, that marketing brain, and that just starts going. And so then I couldn't unsee what I saw. And a few weeks later, I was at Whole Foods with a friend, and she wanted, again, I was the mom, the go-to mom. Everybody asked me about ingredients and things like that. And she asked me to look for a skincare product for her 11-year-old daughter. And I said, okay. So I went up and down the aisles and tried to find something. And this was Whole Foods. And everything was anti-aging focus. So when you're anti-aging focus, the ingredients are really not right for young skin. And so the next day in the shower, I had this good for you girls pop in my head. And I said, if anybody's going to do this, it's going to be me. And so there was no turning back. And that's really how the journey, and, because I had been working with other, skincare companies and supplement companies, there was a lot of the processes about building a brand that I understood. But it's very different when it's somebody else's brand and your brand. It can be really scary. So, but there was, like I said, there was no turning back. I was really ahead of my time when it came to girls and skincare and things like that, but super proud of that.
That's incredible. It reminds me, so you've really understood like what's going on for the immature body, right? Mm-hmm. But as I'm heading into perimenopause and that whole section of my life, I was noticing that like what I was putting on my skin and what I was ingesting was messing with my hormones in this stage of my life. And so I started making my own chapsticks, my own lotions, my own sunscreens, because I was like, I'm not going to add more to what's already messed up going on in here. And it was wild to see that like, even just this micro shift, I mean, does it take me a little bit longer? Yeah. Does it feel better on my skin? Does it work just as well? Absolutely. But I know the 4 ingredients that I'm adding, and I know that they're all safe, and I feel good about it. And I use them on my kids. It's like,
well, when they're babies, we protect them so much, but puberty is the second largest growth in a human.
Yes.
Right. And it's not, we talk about puberty, and every time we talk about puberty, the brain always goes to the reproductive organs, but that's really not. The reproductive organs are actually the last ones involved.
It's all of our brain stuff that's going on.
The hypothalamus, puberty starts in the hypothalamus and then the pituitary gland. It's also the adrenal glands on the kidneys. So it's a cascade. It's a delicate cascade, and it's the brain, it's the blood, it's the bones, and then it's the reproductive. So it really hormones. And as women, we are affected, like you already said, by hormones our entire lives.
Yes.
And I love the idea of teaching young people that hormones are your friend. Yeah. Try not, in not making them the enemy.
Yes.
Right. But it's more than just that. It's every system, and you need them, and they really do help you. right? They're a wonderful, and it's just so many different, it's a soup, it's a complicated soup.
Yeah.
And when you
It feels like we have to fight against the hormones and like overthink them and like override them by our logic brain, but our hormones are always going to be taking over.
well, it's like your glass half full, glass half empty, right? It's when you say hormones, oh my gosh, they're amazing. Look what they're doing for my body, right? Rather than to my body. And, and women our age, we can say, oh yeah, it's what now it's like, what's happening, right? But we want those, right? We're fighting them leaving, right? We don't want them to leave. And our whole lives, we didn't appreciate them, right? So it's kind of crazy, right? So when young people, when we can use the right language, I think it's less scary. I know it's less scary. And have those conversations earlier about the real benefit of all these hormones and how they're really helping to help you grow, help protect your body, set you up for a wonderful future. I mean, there's just so much good stuff there.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more, that language of how to talk to your kids about hormones, because I recently read a study that like puberty was starting as young as like 6 and 7 for girls these days, which is kind of blows your mind. Like my son is 7 years old and I'm like, I can't really envision that, but it's definitely happening. Chemicals are already shifting in their bodies. So parents aren't really aware that this is happening so much younger, right? I mean, we started our periods in our teenage years. Now they're starting them at like 9 years old. And so this is a hard conversation to have. And it's a hard realization for parents to realize puberty is going to happen way before we thought it was going to happen.
Well, in the other systems and in other systems, right? It's not just, the breast development and, the menstruation. So yes, in the 40s, it was 14. It's now 11. The average age of puberty is 11. Breast development used to happen at the same time, but now breast development is almost happening 2 years earlier. And the way that the way that it's easier explained is that your body is an organic machine, right? So when you eat a protein, a carbohydrate, a fat, your body knows what to do with it, takes it in and says, okay, this is this, it puts it and utilizes it how it's supposed to. So now we're introducing our bodies to synthetics, dyes, all of these ingredients that are chemical based. The closest chemical compound your body has is estrogen. So what's happening is we call these chemicals estrogenic, meaning they're mimicking estrogen in the body, right? So what's happening is during this cascade for girls during puberty in the brain is just sitting there waiting dormant, like waiting for these little signals naturally. And now they're receiving these signals at a much younger age.
That's wild.
Isn't it crazy?
Well, it's such a disservice.
It is. It's huge. And people will say, oh, well, it's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. But you don't realize it's a little bit of this and a lot. And it adds up. Wow. Now, boys are not immune. I mean, girls are my cup of tea. Like girls are that because that's where my research is all based. But boys are not immune. And you will see a lot of boys in middle school have breasts. They'll get, heavier. They get a little that breast development. But what happens is when their natural testosterone kicks in, it negates that. It pushes that estrogen down. Right?
But they've also been getting those markers to start developing. Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely. So, estrogen, and again, there's all kinds of chemicals in there's all kinds of chemicals in our body, but estrogen is one of those that the body will say, okay, to a chemical, okay, we think this is estrogen. Right. So, and the fact of the matter is that if it's just early development, we would say, oh, okay, this is crazy, but we'll get over it. But statistically, we know that the earlier a girl enters puberty, the greater risk she's at for cancer and disease as an adult. Higher levels of estrogen also during bone development will stop your growth. So,
that's a big one.
That's a big one. Right. And during puberty is when your bones, 26% of bone growth happens during puberty. Ironically, when you go into menopause, whatever, this is crazy. Whatever that bone growth was in puberty is what you're going to lose in menopause.
That makes sense because I've lost literally an inch.
So
I went to my physical like 2 days ago and I was like, wait, I'm an inch shorter. Like, when did that happen?
when we look at their little developing bodies, I think it's, they get crabby and they get cranky, and then we just, oh, you don't want to eat that. You want to eat the chicken nugget, or you want to eat this, and we're going to force feed like you're not, their nutrition goes to pot. They don't want, and we stop. We can't, right? I mean, we can't, because what we do and how we guide them now truly affects the health of, as they're adults.
Wow.
Right. So we
Amazing.
can't stop that. But here's what we can do is we can learn and we can show them empathy. Because again, they're dealing with a different heart rate. They're getting an adult heart rate. They might have joint pain. They might have bone aches. Their myelin sheath is actually making faster. So that's a very sense of out of control, because the synapses are going much faster than they were used to, right? So they can have these outer body experiences. And now they're a little cranky. And we say, okay, well, we blame it all on that, right? And when we empathize and we understand exactly what their little bodies are trying to do, we can show some grace with it and say, God, that'd bring me to my knees, right? Because again, in menopause, we say, oh my gosh, this is crazy, right? And we get away with all of that because we feel so out of control ourselves. And so I love that this is happening together with women and like the girls and mom, because of perimenopause when they have tweens, right? So there's so much relatable information and so much relatable that's happening. And the first sign is, in younger people, like you said, can be the brain and that cortisol and what we call the cuddle chemical, right? So there's a huge attachment where, your kids just bounce around, they play with everybody, but now they're starting to get into cliques. When, somebody says something to them, maybe at school or the playground, it hurts a little more, stings a little more. So that's usually the first sign. If it's other than if it's not healthy, where they're having pubic hair or body odor really early. So those are some of the signs. But if we understand as parents what some of those things are, we can watch for what's normal or what might be a little bit off.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting that you say that because, when a baby's teething, we're obviously going to be really gentle and empathetic to that moment. Because we know if we were growing teeth
Yeah,
as adults,
it
we'd
hurts.
need like a morphine drip, right? It's like
Yeah.
crazy painful, but they go through it as babies. And we do all the things to like help support in that moment. But when we go into the teenagers, we're like, ugh, like, we think it's a behavioral thing that they can fix in the moment, but that's actually not what's happening. And it's
And and there's so much, there is a thing as puberty trauma,
Mhm.
right? And again, we don't, they don't not have critical thinking yet. They don't know what's happening to them. I literally remember the outer body experiences that I had during puberty.
Yeah.
They were severe. Like I like standing outside myself. It was crazy.
Mhm.
And so, it is, if we can empathize with some of these things, I think it makes our job a little bit easier too.
I love that. And I love that what in terms of like an empowered conversation as you're kind of prepping your kids for the inevitable changes. Like I know for me, body image was like a really, really big struggle. And I know that with social media and everything, it's shifting younger and younger with these, body image dysmorphia visuals of like who you are. I mean, my eating disorder started at age 11 and it
Yep.
lasted till I was 22. So but my parents were none the wiser.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your advice as maybe even like a puberty expert, how can we talk to our kids about the inevitable body changes, about the feelings that they're going to feel, about the sensations that are totally normal, what they can expect, and like how to really empower them through this moment as opposed to adding the shame, the gunk, all of that stuff that usually happens.
Yeah, I think, well, words matter. So how we talk about it. And when we, mark their growth on the doorway, or however we're doing that, when there's a growth spurt or things like that, we start using a positive. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Look what your body's doing. Right? These hormones are kicking in, they're firing, and just asking questions. How are you feeling today? How's your body? Are you aching? Pay attention to that little stuff. Right? Again, those growth because again, if you figure you're going to stretch, everything is firing, right? So it's those little day-to-day conversations that I think you just have to have, or just be conscious of, right? If there's attachment issues with friends, give them tools to deal with that. When you're feeling out of control, right? How does that feel? How does that make you feel? What can we do in the meantime to help you get through that? Right. For girls specifically, downtime is huge because it allows them to go inside of their heads and think, right, and pause. So anything you can do with young girls to make sure that they're, whether it's journaling, coloring, anything that they do off a device or play, is super good for them because it lets them get in the moment and lets them listen. Because in the same time that puberty is happening, in women, we're also developing our own empathy and our own sixth sense. Our intuition is developing at that time. And that doesn't happen with lots of noise. That happens with a lot of downtime. So even if it's reading or things like that, to make sure that they're spending some time alone. That is so super crucial for girls.
That literally makes so much sense. I probably have 52 journals back from when I was a kid that were just like chocked full of all of my insights and feelings and all that.
Well, I think we've stolen a lot of their adolescence because we are not doing that, right?
Yeah.
We know, again, the physical exercise that's important for them. So much that we know is right.
But a lot of it's been kicked over to devices. A lot of it. So tell me a little bit about your perspective of the messaging that's happening on social media, how to protect our children from these very unrealistic body expectations. A lot gets shared on social media that we probably don't know our kids are even viewing, but the conversations around puberty, the conversations around body changes, about like the crazy woman and all of these things that actually, happen. How do you help navigate and educate around social media?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back one point because I think this is important that you mentioned earlier. Friends can be a great teacher too in your watching their body growth. Oh my gosh, did Sally just like she shot up like like, oh my gosh, she must have grown 3 inches this summer or whatever. And just awareness of everybody's body's different, right? Because if you were an early bloomer, you feel like a Martian. And if you're a late bloomer, you feel like a Martian. And there really isn't any right or wrong way. But again, being able to identify as a parent when something might be a little off. So I want parents to also remember that they are their children's first influencer, right? They are their first influencer. And understanding that they do not have the critical thinking to understand that somebody is selling them something, trying to get right. And I don't believe young children should be on TikTok at all. I mean, that's just my thing. I do not think it's a place for young children. It is just not a good place for them.
My son, he's 7. He's always like, when am I going to get a phone? I'm like, maybe high school, maybe college, like don't expect it anytime soon, because I know how sensitive he is. And I know how everything, like he'll see a commercial during a football game. He's like, I want that. Or he'll see, an ad for a movie. He's like, can we go see that today? So it is just like the constant flooding of influence. Like you say, it starts so young. I mean, they can sing the jingles, they can do all the things. I don't want him to be free reign, able to see whatever is being.
Yeah, I mean, we have to monitor that. We have to be the heavy, let's be honest, right? And sometimes it's hard and sometimes you don't want to be, but I always joke and like, you want to be a cool mom, but when have we ever been cool? Like, forget it. We're not cool. So, they might hate you now, but they'll love you later, right? It's our job. And the thing is we can handle it, right? Because we know the benefits of, that monitoring that. But the big thing is having those conversations. I used to sit with my daughters when they were going, through their phones, when they finally had phones, and they knew that there was no expectation of privacy on their devices whatsoever. They could be taken away at any time. This was a privilege. This wasn't something, I don't care if all of their friends had it, and that was not the way we were going to do it. And I would sit with them and we would look and we would say, okay, why do you like this person? And we would, what was funny, what was good, what was maybe concerning. And it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't watch them. I would say, Why are you finding this? Like, why do you, like, what about this is somebody that would be your friend? Like, is this someone you would invite to your birthday party? If this is not someone you would invite to your birthday party, or you would invite to Nana to meet Nana, we always use Nana because Nana is awesome. And like, would you have them to your birthday party? And they would go, no. I'm like, then why do you follow them? It's not somebody that you necessarily want to associate with. And then you're going to find so many more people that you might be more of a positive, right, influence. And influence always runs down. And that's what we're finding out in the media. So all of these 20 somethings are actually, it's the 12-year-olds that are watching them, right? It's not the 20-year-olds that are watching them, it's the 12-year-olds that are watching them. And so there's definitely that gap. And again, understanding that they don't have the critical thinking. So teach them critical thinking. Ask them why. This is a great tip too. So they come to you and they say, oh, I have to have that Stanley Cup, right? Or that
Why?
Lululemon bag, right? It's a great pause is your friend. So I said, oh my gosh, I understand. All your friends have that. Come back to me in 3 months and see if you still want it. Come back to you in 3 months. Okay. If they mention it, come back to me in 3 months. 6 months, they're not going to want the same thing.
Yep.
So pause is our friend, and acknowledge, and why do you want that sort of thing?
Yeah.
And when it comes to makeup and beauty, it's easy to understand. Girls are creative. It's their experimental. They love that. It's again an extension of their creativity, but it's asking the whys. Why do they want that? Right? And I love the opportunity to reach girls younger before they're wearing makeup, just because it's giving them something that's helping them fill that need as well. For it's as much psychological as it is healthy, because you're giving them the tools to take care of themselves. And why wouldn't you, right? This is a ownership of your body, understanding your body, feeling good, looking in the mirror for 5 minutes and knowing you're doing something good for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And then before makeup, it actually, if your skin looks great, they're not going to want to cover it up, right? So you're addressing, some of the dirt, the grime, and the, the little, the acne or whatever, the little, so, and then they're not covering it up, because we know also when they start using makeup, it's a bacteria soup, right?
I mean, just thinking about it, like the amount of makeup that we would wear as kids, like I wear makeup once a month at this point, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's to think about the level and the amount of money and how, like, just the layers of cake that were on
Yeah.
my
And
face.
that, you know what, that is by design. That is very trend, right? And trends come and go. I'm very encouraged because I think we're heading towards a minimalist trend, which is really, really great. After COVID, I think what happened is there were so many restrictions that people were, oh my gosh, I want this, I want this, want this. And beauty companies, I'll give you a little insider information. There's what we call mass market and what we call prestige, right? There's two different. There is a new category now called mastige. Yes, because so instead of spending, so it's a lower price point, it might be smaller, a less luxury item, but it's affordable. So instead of saving your money and buying that prestige, version, you're buying 2 or 3 of the mastige, and that is by design. That is totally by design. But I think we're going to see a little bit more of that separation again, back to simplicity, and less, mass. People are going to be pulling back. I do see that pendulum as those trends change.
I think this is really a really wonderful conversation to shift parents' mindsets of, like, we kind of foresee our children's puberty being very similar to us, to realize that it's very different on so many different levels. Not only the quality of the products are different, not only is the societal expectations different, the age is different, social media is present. There's a lot of different elements to our children's puberty versus our puberty, and the messaging and all of the things. It's like they're probably seeing messages, 100 more messages than we ever saw. And
Oh
I
yeah.
love how you're framing it in not a like shameful way, but you're just super curious. You're aware. You're just clocking things and bringing light to it in a really positive way of like, oh, this is happening. I'm noticing this. Something I always talk to my clients about is to like neutrally narrate what you see without
Mhm.
like bringing any sort of expectation or any sort of like storyline to it. So it's like we're just neutrally narrating like, "Oh, I'm noticing this change. I'm seeing that this happened. Hear you saying something in, a different tone. Like I'm noticing that you follow this person on social media. I'm wondering why." Like having that curiosity disarms these power struggles that we get in, disarms the like, why are you thinking that? Or why are you acting like that? You're just neutrally narrating and expecting this to happen versus taking it personally.
And I love the opportunity that moms have to really bond with their daughters during this time. I mean, if you listen to your daughter and if she is, one of those girlies who's like, again, the amount of information that they consume, or, I mean, they could teach us some things, right? But to get involved, right? Get involved with that. And I mean, like I said, you can't unsee certain things, right? So if your child is a big animal, cruelty free person, like which they most are, well then let's look at what ingredients are not cruelty free. Let's look at what ingredients are not vegan. Honestly, a lot of people, squalene is from sharks. You know what I mean? And, glycerin is from cows. So, unless it's a plant-based. So they might be shocked. And they could be the smartest of their friends, right? It's fun to like, hey, let's look at my makeup. Let's go look at my skincare. Let's look, because mine is probably growing algae at this point. Not me, but obviously, but as a mom, you can hey, let's go through this together, right? And I love the message is like when your daughter is in here, now's the time to relook at what you're doing. Remember, she's watching you at every turn, and we've survived their childhood, right? We can kind of lay off a little bit of the stress. And I think now is a really, really good time to reclaim ourselves as mothers and say, you know what? I'm going to be that cool mom. I want her to look at me and say, wow, my mom's doing it right. My mom's no longer the bottom of the barrel, right? Because moms fall to that, and we're doing everything for everybody. And when she sees you take care of yourself, you prioritize you prioritize your nutrition, you prioritize your sleep, right? You prioritize your time. They will do the same. I don't think it's not, I think it's by design that we're both, as women and girls are going through these so much similarities together.
Absolutely. It is funny because it's like the dual timing is these things don't just happen randomly. It's not, it's a
It's a
divine.
gift, and
Yeah.
it's a gift. And
Yeah.
so we're having, my daughters are 22 and 24 now. Would I go back in a heartbeat? Yes. Because you realize it's such a fleeting time, and that window is so short, and the friendship comes later, but the foundation, again, in those conversations starts now. Does she feel comfortable asking you? Are you the one bringing her the knowledge? Yes, you have to be. You have to be the one that's giving her the knowledge rather than her finding it somewhere else, right? So I love that if you can build that foundation, and when you're talking about, stinky armpits when they're 8, you can talk about much more serious issues when they're, 11, 12, and 13.
Absolutely. I know we've focused a lot about girls because this is really the Good For You Girls is your brand. Do you have any insight on, the changing on boys, or is that kind of like the product is really designed for girls? I'm a boy
Well,
mom.
anybody can use the product. I have adults using the product.
Okay.
I use my products. You know what I mean? It's just,
Amazing.
yeah, so, boys, again, it's their puberty hits a little bit later. They're a little less aware of their bodies until they start stinking. That's
Mhm.
sort of that time for them. Again, understanding, the message that you're not stinking, it's the bacteria that's stinking. Well, why are we stinking? Well, we're sweating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your body is trying to detoxify. Maybe it was those Doritos. Maybe it's the diet. You're not getting enough water, and they never get enough water. I mean, the kids are just not good. They're not hydrated enough. They don't have the essential fatty acids, the omegas. Nutrition is so crucial during this time because, again, if the internal is hydrated and taken care of, then the external can do what it's supposed to do much better. But it's, again, it's how they're eating, the probiotics, all of that stuff, but boys do care.
They do.
They really do care. And so also, again, giving them the tools, it's the toolkit, right? It's the tools that they need, and they can understand that as well. Just don't let them douse themselves with those toxic sprays and body stuff.
Axe body spray.
Gag. Oh my gosh, that is just so bad. It's so bad.
Well, I'd love to close with you wanted to share an opportunity with the listeners about Good For You Girls. So I'd love for you to share that and where they can find you, where they can tune into you, follow you, all that good stuff.
They can come to the website, goodforyougirls.com. We're also on Amazon and Walmart.com. And we're the only ones selling there. Nobody else sells our products.
Amazing.
But I do have a discount code. If they want to use it, so it's responsible 20, and then they can use 20% off if they want to do that.
Amazing. So this is perfect for, if we're holiday shopping, if we're going to visit somebody for Thanksgiving, if we have, something we want to bring a gift. This is such a wonderful opportunity to, show that you're caring without pouring it down their throats, right? We're helping them in all these little.
No, it's a way to say I understand and I get 100%. You, and I'm going to support you through it all.
Yeah, this is normal. This is expected, and we're going to make this the best we possibly can.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a total joy. I'm so glad we finally got it to work. We had tech issues ahead of time. Nobody got to see that, but it took a long time. So I'm so glad that we got to do this. And thank you so much for sharing this with my audience. I'm sure they're going to love this conversation.
And they can reach me. It's the info will get to me. So if they have any unique questions or want to share, please feel free.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Responsible Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.